I cannot make you understand. I cannot make anyone understand what is happening inside me. I cannot even explain it to myself. These were the words spoken by an ordinary, hardworking salesman after he found himself waking up in bed as a grotesque, insect-like creature. He had once been the sole hero of his family, sacrificing his own life, dreams, and freedom just to keep them comfortable. But when an accident occurred, his body was transformed into an insect, and from that moment on, everything changed. And the way he was treated, even by his own family members, became the true symbolism of what Kafkaesque really meant. That man's name was Gregor Samsa, a symbol of alienation, isolation, and emotional abandonment. Through this very character, Kafka revealed the cruel side of society. And this is exactly what I am going to discuss in this video. Gregor's metamorphosis was less a physical transformation and more an existential crisis. From the very beginning, Kafka blended the absurd with the ordinary. Waking up as an insect was a surreal horror, yet Gregor's worries remained painfully mundane. He fretted about missing his train and feared his boss's reaction. This strange mixture of the uncanny and the bureaucratic captured what we now call Kafkaesque, a man trapped by an incomprehensible fate, yet more concerned with work schedules than with the horror of his own body. Gregor's first response was confusion and denial. What has happened to me? But the novel quickly moved beyond shock and into deeper anxiety. His isolation and gradual loss of identity reflected a profound existential loneliness. Cut off from his role as a worker and provider, he began to question who he had become and what life was worth without purpose. Beneath his despair lay an unspoken question. What am I now? An animal? Something useless? This quiet self-doubt sat at the very core of existential thought, where existence itself appeared absurd and suffering seemed to go unnoticed by the world. As his family physically locked him away, Gregor's despair deepened. He lost his appetite, withdrew further into his insect body, and slowly surrendered to hopelessness. Isolation pushed him toward nihilism. His daily routine, oversleeping, struggling with the clock, and worrying about his employer, suddenly collided with the absurd reality of his transformation, revealing how even the most ordinary life could become unbearably strange. Locked away by his own family, Gregor sought comfort in small, quiet escapes, hanging from the ceiling, the only moment when he felt he could breathe freely, and avoiding food altogether. His sister noticed that he was rapidly losing interest in eating, and he began to crawl through his room in despair, as if the world itself were spinning around him. By the later chapters, he no longer resisted his fate. He believed he had to disappear, accepting death with a quiet resignation stronger than anyone else's. Ultimately, Gregor's struggle offered an intimate portrait of existential dread. Meaning did not exist on its own. It had to be chosen. When forced to confront meaninglessness, one could either resist or surrender. Kafka showed Gregor surrendering, his world shrinking until even love, duty, and the will to live quietly collapsed. Gregor's value in his world was entirely utilitarian. He was healthy, obedient, and worked endlessly to pay off his parents' debts. As long as he could provide, he mattered. The moment he could not, society, and even his own family, began to treat him as worthless. From the very beginning, Gregor was seen only through the lens of usefulness. When he overslept, his first panic was not about his strange body, but about missing his train and leaving his work unfinished. His fear revealed how deeply his identity was tied to labor. Very quickly, that fragile sense of worth was threatened. The chief clerk arrived at the house, and Gregor realized that his job, the only thing that gave his life meaning, was already in danger. His employer showed no concern, only suspicion. Gregor imagined standing up to his boss, but in reality, the moment he failed to appear at work, he was branded lazy in front of his parents. Worse still, his honesty was questioned, and his reputation was quietly destroyed. The chief clerk, a symbol of industrial authority, never tried to understand Gregor's condition. The moment he heard an unfamiliar sound, he fled in fear, showing how quickly society retreats from what it cannot classify. When Gregor finally revealed himself, society's cruelty became unmistakable. His father attacked him, hurling apples until one became lodged in his back. The injury was both physical and symbolic, a violent act of dehumanization. For a brief moment, the family's guilt softened their behavior, and the apple remained in Gregor's body as a reminder that he was still, in some sense, one of them. But this compassion did not last. Greta, his sister, initially showed care and tenderness. She fed him, cleaned his room, and called him poor Gregor. Yet as time passed, her kindness hardened into cold practicality. Slowly, she stopped seeing him as her brother and began referring to him as it. By the final moments, she openly argued that he must be gotten rid of. Her transformation showed how even genuine kindness could be overwritten by the belief that someone had become a burden. The arrival of the lodgers further revealed society's intolerance. They viewed Gregor's presence as unacceptable, something disgusting that disrupted their comfort. Even their brief interest in Greta's violin music was shallow and impatient. When Gregor frightened them, they immediately left. Gregor's mother represented quiet compassion, trapped by fear. She wept, fainted, and pleaded for her son, calling him her unfortunate child. Her love for Gregor was real, but it was powerless. She tried to create space for him by removing furniture so he could move freely, a gentle and thoughtful act. Yet the moment she truly saw him clinging to the wall, terror overtook her, and she recoiled. Even at the end, as she stood over Gregor's body and noticed how thin he had become, she could only weep. She loved him, but she could not protect him. From the very beginning, Gregor's life was never truly his own. Even before his transformation, his choices were shaped by duty rather than desire. He reflected that he had taken his job solely to support his parents, and though he often dreamed of rebellion, those thoughts never turned into action. He imagined confronting his boss, speaking honestly at last, and walking away. But even these fantasies ended in postponement. Freedom, for Gregor, was always deferred to some distant future, after debts were paid and obligations fulfilled. His plans were never about what he wanted, only about what he owed. His life resembled a kind of modern slavery, disguised as responsibility. After the metamorphosis, even the illusion of physical choice disappeared. Gregor could no longer speak properly, barely control his movements, and often found himself helplessly rolling onto his back. His insect body dictated his existence. Yet Kafka made it clear that Gregor's fate had been sealed long before this physical change. When Gregor revealed to Greta that he had secretly planned to send her to the conservatory, dreaming of celebrating her success together, we glimpsed his inner life, full of care, hope, and suppressed longing. These private dreams made his helpless end all the more tragic, showing how much of his true self had never been allowed to surface. Gregor's relationship with work revealed how deeply it controlled him. He criticized other salesmen for their schedules, yet admitted that he himself had never taken a sick day in 5 years. His identity was inseparable from his job. Even his idea of freedom, quitting, was conditional, possible only after years of repayment and sacrifice. Without work, he could not imagine who he was. Before his transformation, Gregor briefly considered calling in sick, but even that thought was filled with fear. He anticipated punishment, suspicion, and surveillance. After his transformation, when his employer's representative fled in horror, Gregor was no longer treated as a son, but as a problem to be managed. Authority followed him from the workplace into his home, reinforcing the idea that his value had always been tied to productivity. This theme still resonates today. Many people feel trapped in jobs they despise, bound by debt, expectations, and fear of letting others down. Like Gregor, they push themselves beyond exhaustion, believing they have no alternative. If cruel bosses and violent fathers are the chains that bind Gregor, shame is the cage that truly imprisons him. Shame is at the emotional core of the metamorphosis, shaping the actions of nearly every character. From the moment he awakens, Gregor is suffocated by it. He tries desperately to hide his new form. When the chief clerk first knocks at the door, Gregor stammers, his voice reduced to a horrible twittering squeak. He pleads silently through the wall, terrified that someone might hear him. His instinct is to cower, to hide, because he feels unworthy of pity. When he finally reveals himself, it is only because his father's relentless calls, "Gregor! Gregor! What's the matter with you?" make it impossible to remain silent any longer. Gregor's self-hatred deepens as he overhears his family's pity turn into disgust. When Greta sees his abdomen, she screams and faints. Gregor's fear of his sister's helplessness becomes his only support. He literally shrinks to the floor, wishing he could vanish. His shame is so overwhelming that he begs not to open the door for his mother during her fainting spell, terrified of presenting her with one more painful sight. He has already caused enough suffering simply by existing. Shame shapes not only Gregor's behavior, but his family's as well. His mother faints, his father blames him for attacking his daughter, and even Greta cannot bear to look at him. Their horror is not just about Gregor's appearance, but about what caring for him reveals about themselves. Even the cleaning woman is caught in this web. When ordered to hurry, no one responds until Gregor, despite his weakness, ran back into his room as if to advise her. Even in collapse, he cannot escape the weight of shame. When money is mentioned, he feels so hot with shame and grief, realizing how mortifying his inability to provide has become. The family, meanwhile, is ruled by fear of judgment. Their every action is shaped by how neighbors or boarders might perceive them. They overemphasize courtesy and propriety, yet crumble when faced with Gregor's presence. The boarders, disgusted by the conditions in the household, act as ultimate arbiters, allowing the family to wash their hands of responsibility for him. Gregor thinks to himself, he was not a monster, but he felt like one. A distant stranger, as if everything were happening to someone else. Even in the darkness of Gregor's room, beauty remains his last refuge. He clings to a framed portrait of a woman in fur, pressing his body against its glass. This picture, at least, was going to be removed by nobody. Once hanging above the table of cloth samples, the portrait becomes Gregor's entire world. It embodies his longing for human connection, his appreciation of art, and a memory of the past when he was a respectable man. By burying himself in that image, he tries to preserve his soul amid his isolation. Music offers another escape. When Greta plays the violin for the boarders, Gregor forgets himself completely. He is moved to tears, asking, was he an animal since music so moved him? In that moment, he imagines protecting Greta, hissing like a dragon at any intruders while she remains with him freely. His inhuman form fades, and for a brief time, he feels human love and pride. The violin represents salvation through art. It carries memory, reminding him of his secret plan to send Greta to the conservatory. It carries identity, showing he is still her brother who can appreciate beauty. And it carries hope, pointing toward a future he can no longer reach. This echoes Dostoevsky's famous line, "Beauty will save the world." When morning light finally falls on his corpse, signaling the end of March, It suggests renewal outside his room, even if not for him. The portrait serves as Gregor's anchor to humanity. Crawling over it, he holds on to a symbol of civilized, cultivated life. Knowing that his remaining furniture will soon be removed, he ensures that the picture survives, hiding beneath it as a final act of attachment to what he once was. Gregor's death is the story's final paradox. Is it defeat, or is it deliverance? Kafka presents it quietly, almost calmly. In the morning light of a new day, Gregor simply lies down and dies. His final thoughts are of his family, and he whispers to himself that he must disappear for their sake. There is no drama, no struggle, only a long, peaceful release from suffering. Throughout his life, Gregor had carried the weight of duty and guilt, thinking, "Someday I will have to give up entirely," yet he still lived on. In the end, death frees him from this relentless burden. In the end, Kafka holds a mirror up to us. How many of us feel like Gregor today, essential yet expendable? In a society that shouts productivity and stigmatizes failure, even the gentlest among us can become invisible monsters.